I'm Greg Hackney, and let me talk about one of my favorite jigs that Strike King makes. It's the DB structure jig. It's a jig that I use anytime I'm casting. Has a 0-degree line tie. Comes with either a 4 or 5/0 owner hook, depending on the weight of the jig. The 1/2 ounce comes with a 4/0. The 3/4 and 1 ounce both come with a 5/0 owner hook. It's just a great jig. For me, it has replaced the football jig. I believe the hookup is much better than it is on a football jig. It's better on big fish. The head design is weedless, comes through cover great. It's just a great jig when you're dragging rock points, gravel bars, fishing brush piles out deep. Again, anytime I'm casting a jig. It's different. I don't use it a lot when I'm up flipping and pitching. I use a Hack Attack jig or a Hack Attack fluoro flipper. But anytime I'm casting a jig, I've won a ton of money. I won the FLW at Pickwick on it. Just recently in a Bass Open, I caught the big stringer the first day dragging it offshore. Anytime I'm offshore casting a jig, it's the deal. 90% of the time, I honestly probably 99% of the time, the only trailer I use on it is a Rage Crawl. I just match the Rage Crawl to the color of the jig. I like natural colors. This one here is actually Peanut Butter Bug, which is basically some June bug, purple strands, and brown scale pattern. Now, one thing I typically do when I put the Rage Crawl in there, I do not leave it whole. I will bite off the first 2 segments. And then the jig has a great keeper. Part of the keeper is made from the weight of the bait. It has a spike on it. I just fold the weed guard back and thread it on the hook. But regardless, smallmouth, spotted bass, largemouth, anytime I'm casting a jig and dragging a jig, that's the one. As far as line size with this jig, it depends on the depth I'm fishing. Typically, the shallower I'm fishing, the bigger a line. So if I'm only dragging that jig out and say, I don't know, say 5, it can be anywhere from the bank to 8 feet. I typically like to stay with either 16 or 20 pound gamma fluorocarbon. And when I'm fishing out really deep, and I caught them at Lake Hartwell on this jig on a 1 ounce and caught them 60 foot deep, I like 14 pound gamma fluorocarbon. I never find that you need to go less than 14. If I need that bait to be able to feel it out there deeper, I just go to a bigger one. I go to a 3/4, I go to a 1 ounce. But fish don't seem to be line shy on a jig. And this is typically how I pick my line to the bait I'm using. It's to get the right action out of it. And you won't get any better action, dragging a jig like this with 10 or 12 than you do 14. So there's really no reason to give up the strength of having that bigger line. And a lot of times when you're casting like that, you're dragging through rocks, you're dragging through brush. For me personally, it makes me feel a little more comfortable to know that I got 14 to 20 pound test on there and I can lean on them. And that's the other great thing about this jig, that with that extra strong owner hook that's in there, you can lean on them. You don't have to be afraid of them. A lot of us got used to using a football jig with a wire hook. This is not a wire hook. You lean on them. I can't stress that enough. Always when I'm casting a jig, flipping a jig, whatever, bottom fishing in general, I like a high speed reel. This is This is a Lew's Pro TI. This particular reel is 7.5 to 1. And rod wise, I like a longer rod. This is my 7.6 Hack Attack flipping stick. That's the rod that I prefer, when I'm casting that jig out there. I like that long rod because I can pick up a lot of line, and it just helps me because, we're talking about throwing 30 or 40 yards with this jig, and we're talking about fishing anywhere from 8 foot deep to 60 foot deep. And so you have a lot of line out there, and the more line you have out there, the more stretch you have in the line. So it's a huge deal to have that extra rod. Now, one thing about this rod, it has an extra soft tip. It's got a lot of backbone down the rod, but it has a soft tip. And when I'm crawling that jig over rocks and through wood, it helps you, especially in cold water, because that's a great technique, a cold water technique, throwing a structure jig. It helps you feel those light bites. Or a lot of times when you drag over something and you pick your line back up, and when you pick up, it's just soft. And the whole key to feeling those fish is having that soft tip. But you got to have that backbone. And one of the big keys for me when I'm setting a hook on this jig like that out there is, when I feel that fish bite me, I like to reel down on that fish and get him loaded on the rod, because again, you have so much line out there. You know, this is a technique, we're casting a jig. We're not fishing, you know, right around us where it doesn't matter about the stretch because you're gonna take it out with a hard hook set. We're making long casts. So a big key, when I feel that fish poop, poop, bite me or slack the line or whatever he may do, I like to reel down and feel him on that. That's the whole key to having that soft tip rod, is to be able to put that much pressure on that fish without him spitting that jig out. And then you give it all you got. Because again, I can't stress that enough. That owner hook, you can lean on them with this. That's one thing that I like about it. And you know, a lot of times that's a big key fishing deep on big fish, is being able to keep that fish hooked up, being able to crank on him with that high speed reel, pick that line up. But if you get a chance and you've never tried a Strike King structure jig, I'll promise you it'll become your favorite jig when fishing offshore, casting, anytime you're casting a jig. It's my go-to.